So now we're going to look at how to make a graph. Most often, I'm going to give you graph paper that already has the axes, but if we're working with no graph paper, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to need to make our axes. And this is important to make sure that we always use a ruler to make sure our axes are straight. So, next step is we need to title the graph and we need to title the axes. Look at this graph here on the right. What is it showing us? What data is it representing? We will never know because there's no labels on either of these axes. We have no ideas what these numbers mean, what any of this is trying to tell us. The next part is choosing the proper scale. What do you notice about these two data sets? If we look at the scale, they're the exact same set of data. It's just that this is way zoomed out, right? We're going from 0 to 100. Here, we're focused on data between 12 and 22. This starts to make it look very more dramatic compared to this. So it's important about choosing the proper scale so that our data is both legible, meaning it's easy to read, and so that it's meaningful. You'll also want to pick a scale that allows you to use most of the graphing plane. This one here on the left uses the majority of the space that we've made with these axes so that it actually shows a trend line. Whereas over here, we have all of this empty space above the line, and it's not a good use of space. Make sure you include units. Units help tell us how much of a thing we are looking at. If we look at this graph, we have length here, but what is this length? Is it feet? Because if we're talking about the price of a ship in feet, that's very different from, let's say, the price of a ship in inches. We're talking about two very different scales of ship. We could be talking about some kind of origami ship if we're talking in inches, versus if we're talking in feet, we're talking about things like a yacht or a cruise ship. Look at this graph here at the right. See how it includes a unit? Now we know we're talking about millimeters. That tells us we're looking at a relatively small thing. Don't forget to add your data. If you have everything set up but you don't have any data, it still doesn't help as much. So we've talked about different types of graphs. We've talked about how to make graphs. Now I'm going to have you practice working with graphs on your own.